soul tells me that was something that I shouldn't have done. So on Rosh Hashanah, you come along and you say, I'm completely letting go of all that past, and I'm identifying myself with my perfection. Instead of identifying myself with my imperfection, the place of my challenge and my struggle, I'm identifying myself from a place of my perfection of saying, I'm actually whole. Who am I as a being, not as a doing? Who am I as a being? I'm actually a wholesome person. I come from a place of completion. And I have nothing to do with these actions that I have done. It's not who I am. So there's Rosh Hashanah is like sort of, we celebrate the birthday of Adam and Eve. It represents our birthday. It's like the day that you're born. How are you born? You're not born with any slate. There's no leftover luggage from a past life. You come with a clean slate. Your soul is pure, and it's a tabula rasa. You get the color. You get to write your book. So on Rosh Hashanah, it's our birth. We press reset and say, today's the day that I'm born. Today's my birthday. Today's the day that I just entered into this world. Who am I? Okay, who are you? Who are you? And that's the question that we have to ask ourselves on Rosh Hashanah, which is like, what do I want to achieve in this coming year? If I'm giving this new slate, and today is actually my birthday, not just my birthday, my 37th birthday, but my first birthday. I'm just conscious now. I'm 50 years old, but I'm conscious about my life. What do you want to make of your life? Tell us. Like, sit and like conjure up some type of image. Like, what do you want to make of your life? And that's what Rosh Hashanah is. It's when it says that there's a judgment of Rosh Hashanah. The judgment is on the level of our Rosh, on our level of our consciousness. Like, what's the level of our consciousness level? What do you want to achieve? What's the dream? What's the vision? We're supposed to create it. And we're supposed to live it eventually. And that's a Rosh Hashanah. The question that's being demanded of us on Rosh Hashanah as a time of judgment is a lot of self-judgment. Not in a negative way, not to knock yourself down, but on the contrary, to lift yourself up and say, like, I lived my life up until this point this way, but you know how much potential I have? I could really achieve so much more in my life on a spiritual level, on a mental level, on a physical level, on an emotional level, on all levels of my being. I can achieve so much more. And that's the mishpat, that's the judgment of Rosh Hashanah. So first comes the owning, and the owning of our past, taking responsibility, breathing it in, owning it. And then comes the second stage where I just let go and I say, that's not me. These are things that I have done, but I'm so much greater, my potential. There's so much more that I can achieve in this world. And so I'm such a bigger person. So the recognition between, almost like separating between my being state and my doing state. That's the second step. And then the third step then comes Yom Kippur, which is when I finally attain a place of perfection and a living of a place of wholeness, I have the wisdom and the ability to go back in my past and to redeem it. That's the sweetening of my past. So the sweetening of my past is when this concept of like my mistakes become as doinus nasaloi kizachias, like my mistakes become merits. When I can look back at my past and say, okay, I messed up this way. That's true. But in retrospect, now I look back at my life, I say, but that actually brought me to a better point. Because of that mistake, and I was conscious about the mistake, and I was mindful in retrospect, that I was able to look back and see that, it allowed me to become different, to be different, to exist in a different plane. So that's sort of the sweetening of Yom Kippur. So Yom Kippur, again, reconnects us to our past, but from a much more wholesome way. So it becomes redemptive. That's the redemptive process of the negative things that we've done in our past. It becomes owned in a higher context, and therefore it's the idea of becoming sweetened. So really, we're trying to get to that point from Elul, from this month of Acharit, the month of the endings, to get to a place where we can actually recognize that who we truly are when we separate ourselves from our actions. And who we truly are, like on a metaphysical level, on a deeper spiritual level, represents what the quality of the month of Elul is truly about as well, is that the quality is connected to Virgo or Psula. It's also connected to the idea of the letter Yud, which represents our potential, our spiritual potential, our nakuda, our inner quality of goodness that we have, to reconnect with that. And when we're able to do tshuva in that way, or even when we're able to live that way, we end up engaging in life from another perspective, because there are two ways how to deal with life challenges. And this is actually reflected in the portion of the Torah portion that we just read, last week's portion, where it talks about a person's going to battle. So when a person goes to battle, and it's talking about both the collective and the individual, and it says the way that the Torah phrases this statement is that it's aloivecha. A person goes to battle not with his enemy, but a person goes to battle over his enemy. And the enemy, to us, which is mostly relevant, is actually our personal enemy, some type of inner self-doubt, or inner skeptic, or inner part of ourselves that pulls us down, or pulls us to the level of where we're not, instead of following our higher understanding and our clear conscious, we end up following some type of temptation, immediate some sensation. So that's like the inner enemy, the inner struggle that we have. And there are two ways how to deal with struggle. One way to deal with struggle is that you're struggling with your enemy, which means that almost you see yourself as like a schizophrenic type of personality, where there's my higher self, or my one self, and then there's my lower self, and or my other self. There's like my ego and my transcendence, or my Yetzer Tov, my inclination for good in the classic definition, and my Yetzer Hara, my inclination for doing things that are negative and selfish. And these are in clash with each other. And sometimes one wins and sometimes the other wins, and you just get muddied in the process. The other way of living is to say that, who am I? I'm actually alevecha. I'm actually above my enemy, which means I identify myself with my inner purity. I identify myself with my inner transcendence. I identify myself and say, who am I? I'm actually a soul. I'm actually something that's connected to something that's divine, something that's higher, and something that's more powerful, that happens to be enclosed within a body that also has an ego. And therefore, when it's not an even fight, so to speak, like I'm really on top of the mountain, and my lower part is really on the lower part of the mountain. And when we identify ourselves with our higher self, then even when we fall, and our lower part of ourself, or our ego gets better, it takes control of our life, we fall, but it's a certain submission to say, okay, I got it. You fell, but who are you really? And you constantly bounce back. And even when you're engaged with the challenge itself, there are two ways how to do this. One way is you're engaged with the challenge and you're struggling with it and you're trying to fight with it. The other way to engage with this challenge is like, really, I'm above this challenge. We'll say a person gets angry, right? So for some reason, you know that anger is not a good thing, and it's not good for you. It's not good for the other people. It's not good for your health. It's not good for anything. On any level, you know that anger is very unbeneficial. So you understand that. And then you find yourself being angry for some reason, like you find yourself in an angry state, or upset, or judgmental, whatever you are, you find yourself in a state. And so one way is like, okay, I can't be angry, and I'll push myself not to become angry. And then, I know better, I shouldn't become angry. And then you have this like inner dialogue between these two parts of yourself, and whoever wins, wins. The other way to say is like, me angry? I never get angry, because I'm perfection. I'm actually a place of perfection. I'm a soul. It's not a challenge really. I'm really beyond this enemy. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't get angry, but when you do get angry, you recognize that your anger is not really who you are. That's not really the person that you really are living at. So it's just a different way how you engage in the challenges of life. Challenge is really related to the idea of the identification of like, who am I in my true essence? Who am I really? That's really part of the work that has to be done in order to get to a place of Rosh Hashanah in a correct and healthy manner. Is okay. So I own my life. I take responsibility for the things. It's not just like, the milk spilled, but I own it. I spilled the milk. Okay, and I take responsibility for that. But then the question becomes of my identity. But who am I? Who am I? Am I the person that gets angry? Or am I the person that doesn't get angry, but sometimes anger takes hold of me? Like, how do I identify myself? And Elul, this month that we're in, that leading up to Rosh Hashanah, is trying to create this context, the way we can identify ourselves with the inner purity, the inner transcendence, that the point of the Yud that exists within us. So this is a little bit the scheme of the season that we're entering into. So it's moving from these three stages, three steps, which is called, submission, separation, and sweetening. In the submission state, which is now, we're inhaling the entire year. There's another image, but I'm not familiar if I don't know if you're familiar with the 4-letter names of God. So there's the Yud and the Hey and a Vav and a Hey. These are 4-letter names of Hashem. So if you look at the letters, the Hey, when it's actually sounded, is a Ha sound, like that's a Hey. That can either be an inhale or an exhale. So when you actually take a shofar and you put it to your mouth, the small entry of the shofar is like the letter Yud. You place it on your mouth, you take an inhale, so that's Yud Hey. That's the first Yud K, which is corresponding to the month of Elul. And then when you blow it out, which is the exhale, which is the Hey, that creates the vibration through the sound of the shofar, that's the Vav. That's the movement that's moving outwards. So you're actually recreating the name of God, the name of Yud K Vav K, when you're blowing the shofar. Because in the month of Elul, we're trying to recreate ourselves. Now, it should be said that this can be done at every day at any moment. There's not necessarily specifically to Elul. Elul is like the Elul Rosh Hashanah, this time period is like the headquarters, the spiritual nerve center that allows for all these possibilities throughout the entire year. So yes, so you can actually have a Rosh Hashanah moment in middle of, in middle of March, middle of Sivan, and you can have a Yom Kippur moment in the middle of the summer. You can have a moment of atonement. You can have a moment of self-reflection. You can have a moment that you're being judged, sensing the judgment, taking responsibility. We can do that. But in terms of the scheme of the 12-month season, there's every month, every time period has a specific energy, a specific quality that arises that's specifically connected to that quality within that time. So this time of the year, as the summer is coming to a close, as we're entering into the new solar year, as we're entering into a new year, we take full responsibility, we submit, we own, we take responsibility for everything. We recognize that who we truly are is not what we do necessarily. We recognize the inner wholeness, the inner place of completion of who we are. That's in our essence of who we are, in our being state, not in our doing state. Then we can enter in a place of judgment, which is the ability of what could we become from this place of being. Who are we becoming? How are we reflecting? How are we manifesting through this year? And then we can also, on the highest level, come to Yom Kippur and say, I could even go back to my past and sweeten everything that happened in my life, because I recognize that all the things that I've done them. Maybe they were done for silly reasons when they were done, but I recognize that when they were done, and therefore I can sweeten them, and they can become now transformed into merits as well. So that's a general overview of this time period. I'm not sure, again, what you followed, what you didn't, but I think we could open it up for a few questions in case people have any ideas or things that was not so clear.